Well, David, obviously we've got a new government now in office for 5 years with a single party majority. What do you think their priorities should be for helping the East Midlands?
Okay, so first of all, I think it's good that we've got a bit of stability around a single party government. I think we were slightly concerned a coalition would just take a lot of time to sort all that out. Regardless of colour, I think single party is quite helpful. The first thing I think is really important for the East Midlands is we need to get on the map. So we have the challenge of the South East and London always pushing ahead and always seeming to be a sort of destination of choice. The Chancellor very wedded on a northern powerhouse, and I think the East Midlands and the Midlands generally needs to really have a loud voice. The second thing I think we would ask for is we need to get on with it. LEPs don't meddle. I think they've proven themselves to a certain degree so far. The money is now coming through the single pot. We need to get on with the job. The East Midlands economy is doing pretty well. We think we can accelerate that over the next 12 to 18 months quite rapidly. I'm concerned about people meddling in some of that. Business-led, let's get on with it, lead the way forward. We've got a plan, let's execute it. And the third thing, and that's a real story of this government, is about devolution. And I think we would like to see the levers given closer to the local area so that we can not only apply money and investment, but also some of the strategic priorities through some of those levers of growth.
One of the things you said just then was that you've got to shout louder, basically. You've got the northern powerhouses, you've got the southern economy growing very quickly. How on earth do you make your voice heard? What do you do?
Okay, so I think D2N2 has done quite a good job over the last couple of years in getting its voice heard, and we're working quite closely with the other East Midlands LEPs to do that. We've got to have a clear what is special about this area, and I think it's three things. Connectivity, so centre of the country, great connectivity, nowhere further than 3 or 4 hours away by road. The second is about manufacturing and engineering, real high quality manufacturing engineering. And the third area is innovation, really good innovation, knowledge economy, links with universities. They are our three key selling points. But I also think the East Midlands needs to work with the wider Midlands area. And I think actually that will be a real agenda for us, is about how can we work well with the West Midlands, particularly on that engineering and manufacturing element. And I think that's going to be a real big piece of work over the next 12 months.
That's an interesting point because, in the past people have said the big problem with East Midlands, if you come to devolution, is there isn't really an East Midlands identity. No one really thinks of the East Midlands. So you think joining up with the West Midlands and being the Midlands would be a way forward?
I think joining up is good, but I want to be clear that I think this has to be a staged approach. So our first call for devolution is across the D2N2 area. We've got some real assets in this area. We've got a plan of what we want to do. It is important that some of those levers are delivered to our local authorities, to our combined authorities that we are proposing to go forward, to the cities, but also to our rural areas as well. So that's important. On the basis of that devolution, I think there is then a conversation about how we can work well across the East Midlands and West Midlands on further devolution going forward. Some of the more strategic issues, transport, for example. HS2 is going to be decided on the eastern leg over the next 12 to 18 months. It is absolutely essential that we get a eastern leg in and a station in the East Midlands. Otherwise, we're going to lose our competitive advantage around connectivity.
And again, how would you make that happen? How would you make sure that we get that here?
Okay, so I think we've gone part of the way there, which is there is now complete support for the station to be located at Towton. I think that's helpful. We wobbled around a bit for a couple of years around that, but generally we're behind Towton and we want to see HS2 come in behind Towton quite quickly as the preferred choice. The second thing is about working with Sheffield and Leeds and other authorities. It's called the Eastern Alliance, about making sure that we're working together to make the case to government. I don't think there is an argument around HS2 or HS3, which is the cross east-west link north of us here. I think the argument is how do you get both? Both are important, but for us, HS2 is really, really crucial, eastern leg. And I'd be concerned if that goes onto the back burner, which I think is a definite risk.
And looking at the economy, you mentioned that the East Midlands economy famously has been growing quite quickly for the last couple of years. But what do you see as our strengths in particular then? Okay,
so I think the East Midlands economy, whilst it's grown, and it was described by the Governor of the Bank of England as this bellwether, and I think that reflects the broader economy of the UK, there are still some fundamentals that are a bit weak. So we're very strong in manufacturing and engineering. I think the onshoring has died off a bit, so we've got to attract some of these high-level,
coming back to the UK with production.
So high-level companies who are producing manufacturing goods, what we call OEMs, making sure that they're there. So we need to attract those for the local area, and we need to improve the offer for them to locate in this area. And I think the other area is about benefits to small and medium-sized enterprises. So of the 60-odd thousand companies within D2N2, 59.5 of them, 59,500 of them are small and medium-sized enterprises. So they are really the
That's
backbone.
incredible.
So yes, we've got our Rolls-Royce and
59,500.
yeah, so literally about 98% of them are tiny, you know, it's or small and medium, and many of them micro, and they are the backbone of our economy. And actually, we are a bit weak in terms of reach because we're very dependent on Boots and the Derby, Holy Trinity of Bombardier, big companies like that, Rolls-Royce, and we need to make sure that small companies offer that.
And they're the strengths. What about our weaknesses? You know, traditionally people talk about, you know, we have a low skills workforce and education is not too great in the East Midlands. What do you see as the problems to tackle? Okay,
so skills is the single biggest underlying issue in this part of the world. And people want to call it local jobs for local people. I don't mind that. That's fine. But actually, we're not cracking it at all. And we need to stop talking about it and saying it's a problem and take some positive action. And I think the LEP has to show leadership on this. So we're going to be launching, or we've already started to launch, a contract with schools around making people who are leaving school more work ready. So that's called an employment charter, and we're working with schools on that in part of the area. I think the second issue is about graduate retention. So I've got no problem with graduates going to London if that's what they want to do, but we must give them more choices to work in this local area. We have 60,000 students coming into this area in 3 great universities, and we're hemorrhaging them away. And we need to provide them with greater opportunities. That's not easy, but we need to provide them with those opportunities locally. And then I think the third area is about reskilling our workforce. So not least because we've got an ageing workforce, so we need to basically work with existing companies and make sure that we meet their skills needs. And we'll be doing that through some funding that we've got now set out in what's called a Skills Local programme. And any employers out there who are keen to engage on reskilling their workforce, or maybe they've got some new plant and they want to train, then we'd be happy to talk to them about how we can make that happen.
That's quite an interesting point. So let's talk specifically then, if someone did want to reskill their workforce, what kind of help's available to them?
Okay, so there's cash. So there are some strings with it, but there is essentially cash. It's pretty close to being free, actually. I don't want to say it's free because I think it's maybe the value of nothing is. But you know, there is an opportunity for them to work with a local skills provider and set out what their skills needs are, and pretty cheaply they will get that need met through what's called a local response fund or a skills support for the workforce type fund. And we would want to go in there. Now, it's important that we back apprentices because we absolutely think that's really a crucial alternative to university, particularly for people in this area in some of the technological industries. But I think there is a fairly free opportunity for people to come and say, this is our need, how can you help us get there? So they can come to me and have that conversation, and I will put them in touch with a provider who will help them do that.
So who have you got in mind? Give me an idea of a company that would benefit from that. What kind of areas are you looking at?
Okay, so our economic plan for the area looks at a range of key sectors, and I don't want to say you have to be in these sectors, but just as examples. So the construction sector is a very important part of this area, so partly because we've got a lot of aggregates being produced, but also we've got a number of companies in the construction sector out there in the world. And in fact, I've been up and seen a couple this morning in Mansfield and Ashfield and around there. They've got some new industries or new construction solutions they want to take to market, but they need perhaps 100 staff to help do that, and they're struggling to find people from their local schools who are able to come in and get that going. So we had a conversation this morning about writing a skills plan and then helping them with some funding about delivering that both at their schools but also the colleges, and then they've also got some higher level graduates they need, and so we'll put in touch with the local university.
So that's a concrete example of how you help businesses. What else do you do to help businesses in this region then? You know, if I'm looking at you as a small businessman, small businesswoman with a company 5 to 10 people, thinking what's in it for me, how can you help me? Okay, so I think one of the problems with things like LEPs, which is a local enterprise partnership, is that we can sometimes feel a bit standoffish. We are writing programmes. I think the first thing to say is that there is a single entry route in for information. So we've established a thing called the D2N2 Growth Hub. It's not a great name, but it is the route in, and that has advisors who will direct people to the best source of funding, where they can get advice and help, whether it's business support, whether it's skills. So there's a website, there's a voice at the end of a telephone. Over the next 12 months, there will be an increasing number of advisors. So there is a friendly voice, which if you are a business, you can have that conversation with. The second area is that we have some specific funding available for small and medium-sized enterprises to grow their business. Now, it is about jobs. Increasingly, I think it might be becoming about productivity, but at the moment it's about job growth. So if you want to grow your company, then there is a possibility
to get some CapEx money, capital equipment money, in order to grow your business. It is a bidding process. Typical grants are about £150,000 based on perhaps £500,000 worth of investment, but there is funding around to do that, connected to D2N2, so we can direct people to where that is. And then I think the third area is around skills. So we need to get our employers working more closely with our schools, and also making sure that we increase the numbers of apprenticeships, and have a stronger relationship between employers and providers. Now, employers, if they want to go off on their own, have a conversation with a private provider, please do. And there's a lot of merit in that. You can keep it very clean, you can get what you need, etc. If you don't want to do that and you want a bit of advice and support, then we can put you in touch with providers who will come into your workplace and hopefully provide you with a bespoke solution. Now, one of the criticisms has always been around trying to meld existing programs into employers' needs, so employers don't quite get what they want. And I think that's the challenge for us. So I would always welcome feedback around that. If we've sent a provider to somebody and they've gone, yeah, well, it wasn't quite what I wanted, then the beauty of a LEP is that tell us, and then we will go to the provider. You haven't got to do that yourself. Tell us, and we will go and talk to those providers and say, we think you should be meeting the needs of the business, not the needs of you or learners. It's about the business growth that's important.
So I guess one of the messages you're trying to get across is that you're fairly open. There's barriers that people have of an organisation like yourself you want to get rid of, and you want people to direct you basically. Okay,
so I think one of the strengths of the Local Enterprise Partnership is that it is driven by business who understand the needs of business. Now, I'm not saying that's perfect, but it does give us great insight into producing products and useful things that business need, whether it's business support or whether it's skills or whatever. So that is possible. Those business people are very willing to give up their time and go out and drive those products forward. So I think that is an opportunity for business people in this area to say, this is my issue, I want this addressed, and you will have people who will understand that issue. Now, it's important this is public money, so there's a massive accountability issue around this public money. So we have to spend the money properly. We have to see proper developed business cases for why we should make an intervention. But I think you will have business people, not bureaucrats, taking a look at that. You'll have bureaucrats like me sometimes, but broadly, you'll have business people saying, yes, we think this is a good investment to make.
And there's something you mentioned a few minutes ago about productivity might move up the agenda. There's a lot of evidence that productivity has barely improved at all over the recession, even though the economy is growing. Why do you think that's happening, and what are you going to do about it?
Okay, so our strategic economic plan was written on the basis of, it's a jobs target. Our single biggest issue is about delivering 55,000 jobs, and we're already 2 years into delivering that plan, and I think it's been quite successful to date. We've seen the economy grow, we've seen jobs, unemployment reduce. The real underlying issue for the UK, but also for the East Midlands, is around a productivity gap. And I think at some point in the next probably 12 to 18 months, but over the next 5 years, certainly, we will need to revise our economic plan to target our resources more at increasing productivity. Now, the way you grow productivity is around investment, around skills development, which we've talked about a little bit already. So I don't think it's massive changes, but I think it will be less. And I'm not trying to say there aren't people out there who are unemployed and we need to get these people into work and we need to provide opportunities for jobs. But I think it will be more about trying to hit those productivity targets, and probably I would see more execution towards the skills and investment side going in, rather than current programs which are geared very much towards show me some job growth, and then hopefully we'll be able to support that through grant.
And looking over the next 5 years, we've talked about the opportunities for the region. What do you see as the threats? There's a lot of talk about us going out of Europe, for example, which is concerning a lot of businesses. But the next 5 years, what are the big challenges and threats threatening the East Midlands? Okay,
so what business likes is stability, and I think I've already articulated that a stable government is very important. The European question creates uncertainty and instability. So I think we need that resolved, and we need it resolved sooner rather than later. It doesn't mean to say we should resolve it too quickly, but a timetable, and that needs to be supported. That is a real concern around investment and businesses making long-term choices around going forward. Similarly, HS2 needs to be confirmed for this area as soon as possible. This is directly affecting business choices now. For example, if you're on the route, do you hedge, or do you move, or do you say, oh, it will never come, or whatever, and it is creating that uncertainty. People need to buy energy over the next 5 or 10 years. If you're on that route and you might be affected by it, that will have a material impact on whether or not you invest long term. So that is another area of instability. My biggest concern remains that the East Midlands might be overlooked, and the Midlands generally. And that is why the voice of the Midlands and the voice of the East Midlands is really important. So we need to get our MPs to hunt as a pack. We need to have some very clear plans about what our priorities are and taking them forward. And it's always difficult, and we're in the middle of the country, so we sort of leak out all over the place. We've got some marginal MPs, and trying to come up with a common voice is quite difficult. But actually, if they can do it in the north of England, then we can do it in the Midlands going forward. So that is my biggest concern, is that the East Midlands continues to be an area that is overlooked, and there is some history that we've been overlooked in the past. And I think actually D20 has quite an important leadership role in trying to say, wave a flag for this area, show that we are delivering some really exciting and high quality products, and make that case to government going forward.
And going back to Europe, and I probably can guess the answer already, but does the LEP have a view on whether we should be in or out?
I think in terms of business, we believe that whether you believe in reform or whatever, is that the European market is fundamentally important, and we'd have to be pretty clear about why there was any economic value in doing anything other than staying in. I don't think the facts of what's good, what's bad is out there. You hear different things from different businesses, but broadly it seems to me that that is a very important market. And therefore, you'd have to have a powerful argument to say why you shouldn't stay in under a reformed model. I think everybody recognises there's a lot of red tape, and certainly some reform is needed.
And at the risk of making this sound like your job interview, 5 years from now, what's your view of success? What will East Midlands economy look like if you've achieved all the things you've wanted to do?
Okay, so my absolute priority is D2N2 to be good at what it does. So I think you can have grand plans and you can try and do anything on a national scale, but fundamentally my board is very concerned about making sure that D2N2 punches its weight economically and in terms of helping businesses grow in this area. So we want some great feedback from local businesses, our universities, our FE colleges and our local authorities to say that a local enterprise partnership with D2N2 has made a real difference and actually has really acted in the best interest of growing the economy locally. So that's important. So secondly, I think that is articulated between continuing to be, and this I think it's important over the last 2 or 3 years, the East Midlands has led the country in terms of economic growth. So continuing to be at the forefront of economic growth. Now, whether we can continue to be in the lead of that throughout the next 5 years, I think that's going to be pretty challenging, but I certainly want to be up there in the Champions League part of that going through. We quite often use the Champions League analogy for our LEP. And then the third area is around levers and devolution powers. So there is a real opportunity. I think local areas understand the needs of their area better than Whitehall, but I think we've got to make a real case for how devolution will deliver better results. And I think we haven't made that case yet. I think we've said we would support devolution, but I think we need to make a really strong case. And over the coming years, we will see powers devolve down to the local area so that some of those levers, for instance, some of the economic development programs or some of the transport powers, and maybe even public health and social care. Now that's a big issue. We see some of those things being devolved down to the local area so that local people have got greater say on how they can influence those.
Okay, David Ralph, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.